Well, like on the note of sort of basically adapting to whatever life throws at us, physically, are you doing, I mean, I know you said you're doing walking, but are you doing things like yoga or stuff like that to help?
So before I got sick, and I got sick back in 2016 and didn't realize what was going on in my body. I had are you familiar with Epstein-Barr virus? It's
I've
like what
heard, is that
kids call it mono or the kissing disease, that sort of thing.
I've heard of it. I can't remember the symptoms or anything like that, but I've definitely heard of it.
Most kids get it in like gym class in
Yeah.
school when they're a kid, and you get a a real bad whatever fever for a week and then you're fine.
Yeah.
I didn't get it as a kid. I got it when I was 26, and if you get it when you're an adult, it's a whole different ball game. I had it active for like 6 months, and so it wrecked my body, and that's what my specialist, my urologist, thinks is what knocked out my testosterone production.
Right.
So before that, I was there was a point in my life where I was walking about 3 hours a day, 3 to 4.5 hours a day, and lifting weights 5 days a week, and that all fell off a cliff. And I want to get back to that,
Mhm.
um, because man, it was bizarre. I didn't know what was happening to my body, but I remember even in 2017, 2018, I was working with a personal trainer, and I would try lifting weights, and I would literally be like the old TVs from the '90s where I would just be fuzz in my eyes when I'd start lifting weights.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
it was so scary, dude, and, I didn't know what to do, and she thought I think she thought I was messing with her 'cause he just doesn't wanna do the work or whatever, but man,
Yeah.
this was like it was not good. And so, anyways, now, like I said, I'm getting better and better, and I'm hoping. The other tough part of this is COVID threw a wrench in everything. If there wasn't COVID, I'd probably be there's a Planet Fitness 5 minutes for big gym, 5 minutes from my house. I'd be over there lifting every day,
Yeah.
um, trying to lift every day. And but I'm hoping whether it's this winter or next spring, next summer, when hopefully things continue to simmer down a bit. Now we got to worry about monkeypox too, because that stays all over gym equipment, and I don't want freaking welts all over my body. It sounds terrible.
Definitely not.
So I got to figure out how I'm going to do it, but I eventually that's the sort of thing I want to get back into too, because it's walking is a great place to start, but it's obviously not the end all be all. Are you like a gym nut or anything?
Like I was going to the gym regularly maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I really want to get back into being a bit more active. Like since we moved, it there's so many distractions still, but like I'm slowly getting there to a point where I'm being more active. Like same thing with drumming. I haven't really had a chance to sit down and practice, but like slowly getting there.
Yeah, that me too. So I'm trying now. I try to sit down for an hour, hour and a half, two to three times a week on the kit. And I mean, that's the other thing about this too is, and I see you got a little four-piece kit behind you. And normally that's what I'm playing. I'm playing a little downbeat size, your 2012-14,
Yeah.
and I've got this giant North kit set up now, which is like those old drums from the I think late '70s, early '80s that look like giant tubes. It's
Yeah, yeah.
that red kit that I've had on Instagram lately. Dude, that thing is a freaking workout to play because it's on a giant rack. My crash and my ride cymbal feel like they're about 7 feet apart. So I'm like stretching my arms out to try to hit these freaking cymbals. I and then lay on top of it that it's I'm in the Midwest of the United States, so it's like super freaking hot and humid here. This is not a good combo. That's why I look like I'm just drenched in sweat every video lately. Oh
That's
man.
good though. What a great way to combine a bit of cardio plus drumming. It's It's
And
perfect.
I look like an idiot in my videos. Yeah, it's perfect.
The
Perfect.
perfect combination of everything. Entertaining as well. So,
Yeah. So
um,
how
yeah.
many students do you keep on your roster?
At the moment, I think someone asked me this the other day. I think 17 now because one had recently dropped off.
That's pretty good. And if you don't mind me asking on the air, what does an average drum like? Do you do half hour lessons?
I try to stick to 45 minutes.
Mm.
For the more advanced students, I like sort of suggest an hour.
So
And
like
then
on an hour, let's just say on an hour to keep things square, like how much is an average hour with a teacher in Australia?
it really depends. There's a lot of people charging 60. I charge 70. I was getting lessons from the teachers I learnt from. One was charging strangely $52.50. Someone was charging 80.
Mm.
Someone was charging 70, and someone was charging 60 based off, yeah, like the teachers I had learnt off.
That is really cheap.
Really?
So like
Okay.
so 60 AUD comes out to 42.76 USD.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So like stateside, even here on the low end, and what's interesting is the time duration too. Is normally with a teacher here in the States, you do a half hour with them and you're out. And more advanced people will do an hour. I usually
Yeah.
do an hour for people that book me. And if you're working, like a normal sort of city type of thing, and you're just getting kids whose parents want them to study with someone privately,
Mhm.
then you're looking at about, and again, the figure I had here for at 60 AUD, you're looking at about 42 USD. It's usually 60 USD an hour for a teacher here. So that's like, here we are. We're doing welcome to the podcast where we just do conversions on lesson rates. So that would be 85-ish AUD an hour.
Oh wow. Okay, that's
That's
pretty good.
interesting how different that is. Um, I always find that part fascinating too, is like how much people value arts education in a
Yeah.
certain, area.
That's the
Um,
thing as well, is what I've learned is like it's learning learning the drums. I mean, maybe it's more specific to the drums. It's really not an essential thing. So
mm.
it's
well,
yeah.
but there's also the element of does celebrity play a role in pricing there? Because I'll tell you, I have celebrity drummers who I know are getting paid almost 400 Australian dollars. Uh, for my friend stateside, that is about 275 US dollars an hour to teach drum lessons.
Wow. Are they one-on-one lessons or like
One
group?
on one. Yeah, one on one.
Whoa, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's yeah. Something to strive for.
But do you like do you I don't know how connected you are with that world, but like I don't know if this dude even does this. This is just sort of like if the dude from Men at Work was doing drum lessons and you're like, dude, I gotta learn that like bell part and the concert Tom Phil from Land Down Under. Like with that sort of celebrity status, do you see drummers like that who are able to charge whatever, even 125, 150 AUD an hour?
I To be honest, I don't really think that would happen here successfully.
Mm.
Like for example, I studied music at college as well, and they had a drum teacher there who I started getting private lessons with outside of the college. And he's one of like Sydney's most sought after session drummers. He was charging me 100 an hour. Um, so I think like, maybe that's sort of hitting the top.
That's the top.
Yeah, in
Wow.
Australia at least. And I've had lessons from others who are in well-known bands, and they're charging like 80 an hour.
Yep.
But yeah, so I feel it's a little bit hard to push the prices here. I don't know
Mm.
why. I'm really not sure. I feel like 60 to 80 is the average range, and anything on top of that is rare.
This is what's so interesting too, is like then that complicates, and this is where like when I'm talking to my clients, it's like this is what complicates building a drumming career, is taking it into account if you're not in the US. Because I mean, I know the US market pretty dang well, but Australia is totally different. Australia is totally different. Europe is totally different. South
Yeah.
America is totally different. Asia is all these, every continent is going to have a different way of doing these things. And but the benefit is that if you have products online, you can sell to anybody anywhere. I've had
Yeah.
students, I've had Russian students in Germany. Uh I've had students from other countries that are now in America. It's like it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, where you're at now. I can work with you.
Yeah.
And I've sold my drumless tracks in every continent except for Antarctica. So if anybody knows anybody in Antarctica, I'll PayPal them $1 just to buy my tracks for 50 cents. How about that?
That is a massive achievement. Congrats, by the way.
Thank
That's
you.
incredible.
It's not a huge money maker, but it's such a fun thing. And again, the other part of it too is it gets the word out there. So like this is something I talk about with my clients all the time, is like the drumless tracks are such an interesting thing because, and then this is another reason why I keep them free, is it's got my name all over them. And the one thing I ask is like, if you make a video with me or with my tracks, just tag me in it.
Yeah.
And what's cool is then, so I sell the tracks to person one, and then person one posts a video playing over the track and mentions me in there. Somebody who watches person one's video says, "Hey, what is this track?" "Oh, it's from Timbo." Now they do the same thing. They buy it. And that, so it's the word of mouth thing, but then it also
Yeah.
spreads to this audience of just wider viewership. And then that builds my following even further. So it's a really unique product in the way that it um, can create income and create just general visibility.
Yeah. Two questions on that.
Yeah,
So are
yeah.
you a multi-instrumentalist then? Is that the right term?
hmm
Multi-instrumentalist? Yeah.
So I've been playing music since I was 8 years old. Started on piano when I was 8, bass at 12, guitar at 13, and then I didn't start playing drums till I was 15.
Yeah.
And I should have known that I was a drummer. I was like one of those kids that whenever I was at band practice, I would sneak behind the drum set to play it, and then the drummer would yell at me. Um, and so I'm really glad that I finally, I was forced into it. I was playing with some guys when I was 15, and I was going to play bass in the band. And I remember my buddy, I think it was my buddy Billy, said to me, "Listen, Tim, we can always get another bass player. It's not that hard." He said, "You can kind of play drums. Go get a drum set." So a buddy of mine in high school, he sold me a drum set for $10, and that was it.
Wow, $10.
Yeah, $10. It needed some love, but for $10, I wasn't gonna turn that down. So I played everything, and I still have. I got a MIDI controller with plenty of software instruments. I've got too many guitars. I've got 3 electrics. I got a baritone. I got an acoustic. I got a bass. My partner's got a ukulele, so I can play. What is that? Tiptoe Through the Tulips if I want to do that. Uh, so we got a lot of toys, but having that history there, I'm able to make these tracks. And originally if you go back, the first 2 volumes, there's only like something like 7 or 8 songs on the first one, maybe 13, 14 on the second one. and that's because I was like I would take like a sample as the basis for the loop, and then I would, I'd pull out a guitar, lay a guitar over it, pull out a bass, lay bass over it, hop on the MIDI controller, pop a little bit of piano over it, a little bit of Whirly or Rhodes or whatever over it,
Yeah.
and that is so time consuming. So I went all sample based, I think starting volume 3, and that's why I'm now I'm able to pump out 100 tracks at a time because it's so much less of a burden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's the benefit to that is just, yeah, and I guess it's just to say that, yeah, there's 100 tracks there, but because they're sample based, I'm not having to kill myself making them.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the second question I had was, what why did you go through those other instruments first? Like what happened there?
It was always out of, well, mostly it was out of necessity. I think I started piano first because I wanted to play something. I assume I must have expressed interest in piano to
Yeah.
my mom, and then got me piano, took piano lessons. And then I remember me and a bunch of friends when I was 12, we were going to try to put together a little band. So we all get together in a basement, and my buddy Kevin, he's got a drum set, and my buddy Steve's got a little PA thing to put a mic through, and then his brother Dave's got a guitar and a guitar amp, and I show up with a Yamaha cheapy keyboard, and they're all like, "What, Tim? What are you gonna do with this?" They're just like, "Go buy a bass, play bass in the band." So I begged my mom to get me a bass, and sure enough, I got a bass, and so that's why I got into that band and started doing that thing. Started taking bass lessons, and a year later, I got the guitar. I think just because I wanted to play guitar too, um, and so it was the same teacher that was teaching me bass was teaching me guitar, so that was really cool. Just to kind of whatever I would felt like learning that week, I would bring that instrument with, and we would putz with it.
That's cool.
And that was great. And then it was the same thing that happened with bass happened with the drums. It was just like, hey, need a drummer. You can kind of do this, figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always out of necessity is why I did those things.
Well, it's great that yeah, like you ended up at the instrument that, from what I understand, you would naturally gravitate towards anyway. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's one of those things where, I mean, did you start out on something else or did you start on drums?
I had a sort of similar story to you where I always wanted to be a drummer. My dad is a drummer. Um, I wanted to learn, but then my parents pushed me onto piano, which like I did for about a year and then I just lost interest. And then I school band came up and I was like, yes, now's my opportunity. I'm gonna get on that drum kit finally. And then I got pushed onto clarinet. And then that was it. Like I think as a kid, maybe I just lost interest in music completely. But again, like when I was a teenager, I think I was 16 and going through my rebellious teen phase, I just was like, because my parents had split up at the time, so I was able to just tell my mum, I'm getting a drum kit, you can't stop me. And then sure enough, then my dad gave me a hand-me-down kit. So yeah, that's how I got onto the drums.
Wow. Well, and so this will be interesting. So when I got a drum set, it was probably within the first 6 months that I realized this is the instrument I should have been playing all along. Everything came so much more naturally. I got so much better, so much quicker. Did you have the same experience then when you hit drums?
Same thing. Like
Yeah.
I would come home from school, get on the kit and bash away until like my mum was shouting at me to do my homework. Yeah, couldn't keep me off it. And I was old enough to sort of think, have the, what's the word or the saying? Basically, I wanted to make up for lost time. So I was practicing my butt off.
Did
And
you
yeah.
did you take anything from your dad's drumming? Like, did he ever
Um
teach you or expose you to certain music that you're like, oh, I definitely cite so and so as a reference because my dad taught, got me into that music.
It's weird. Like I haven't. He never taught me. He's still playing now, so time to time I go watch him. But he sings and plays, so for me, it's like I haven't learnt anything from him. He inspires the hell out of me, but I appreciate that there's a big difference in playing styles, and I just sort of like I appreciate what he does. I don't want to try emulate anything he does or anything like that. I would love to sit down with him one day and be like, both of us have a kit and we just sort of show off some licks to each other or beats. Hopefully that time comes soon. But yeah.
That's a really good experience. I can tell you from personal experience because so my dad's brother, my uncle, he got my he got me my first drum kit.
Oh,
So I think
nice.
I think it was when I was 3 years old, he got me a drum kit. It sounds like with the intention just to tick my dad off because he knew it was going to be loud. So this the story that I've always heard is they put the drum kit in my room and they'd close the door because it was loud and then I played it until everything was broken on it. And gosh, it's like I wish I would have known at that point, I should be doing this. But years later, a few times I've had my uncle over here at the house, set up a couple drum kits, had headphones for both of us, and I would just say like, what song do you want to play to? And why don't you put on some Judas Priest? And I'd say, all right, here we go, dude, or like, what was he? Billy Idol. He liked Billy Idol a lot. And, it's like stuff I would never play this stuff. And then there were a few things like, there's a little bit of classic rock that I'm able to be like, all right, dude, yeah, I can get it. I can get into that,
Yeah.
but it's just like, to have this dude in the family who I played in two different bands over quite a few years with his son, my cousin, and he's a drummer too, but he did vocal. He was incredible death metal vocalist. Like this
Okay.
dude, he was like, he's the kind of kid who always did kooky voices when he was younger, and so to be able to take that skill set and apply it to death metal, and he wrote really cool lyrics. And anyways, but all drummers, uh, and but to be able to sit down with my uncle, in front of me and just like both smile, just having a hell of a time, and me playing the way I want to play, him playing the way he wants to play, and that was just too cool, man, too cool.
Yeah.
So you got to do that with your pops. You got to make that happen.
Definitely. Definitely. Do you have anything remaining from your first kit?
No, I have a feeling that is all in a garbage dump somewhere. I've got my first bass though, still like that's the one thing we still obviously we still have the piano that I have in the living room here, but uh my first bass was a Squire Affinity Precision bass. And in 2002, that came in a pack with a little, Frontman 15B, a little 15-watt bass amp. And it came with a instructional VHS tape.
Oh wow.
So the first day I had it, I learned a 12-bar blues on bass, and I was just like showing it off to whoever was walking through the freaking house at the time. And so over time, I played a ton of punk music when I was, 12, 13, 14, and I wanted to have a punk rock bass. So I bought my second bass when I think when I was 13 or 14. I might have been 14. And that was like a Mexican jazz bass in agave blue. So it's like really light blue. I don't even know. I don't think they use that finish anymore. And I remember I took my bike over to the music shop on a on a major highway, and I rode my bike on the major highway over to the music store with my backpack, put the new bass in my backpack with the neck of the bass sticking out over my freaking head, and then rode my bike back home with this new bass. And so I said, all right, I got this new bass now. I could do something with my old bass. So one of the bands I really loved was Rancid.
Oh yeah.
punk band, Matt Freeman, incredible bass player, and he always played P basses. And so I wanted to make mine look cool and old like like his. And so I just like sanded all this black plastic finish off of the Squire down to the wood, and then I just like drenched it in whatever like furniture oil I could find. And then get this, on the headstock of the bass, uh I would love right around that time is when Fender came out with the Mike Dirnt from Green Day signature P bass, and it had like almost like a Telecaster style headstock where it kind of cut straight across like a hockey stick.
Oh, yep, yep, yep.
So what did I do? I cut the freaking P bass headstock right off and just had a flat. I thought it was cool. I was an idiot, and so, so that's how that bass remained for years. And so then, uh, within the last year and a half now, I said this is enough with this kooky old neck, and I bought a bunch of parts and like a high mast bridge, which is supposed to be like the old Leo Kwan bridges. I got a loaded pick guard, and I got a vintage modified Squire neck, and just the only thing that remains of that first Squire P bass is just that old sanded body with a probably 2 pounds of furniture oil inside the wood.
Well, it's like it's good to have that to hang on to because you just explained that whole story in so much detail. It, it holds nostalgic value.
Well, this is the tough thing about drums is they take up so much more room
Yeah.
than anything else. But all of any instrument has a story, right? I got a dear friend, John Perrin. He plays in a band called NRBQ, plays in a bunch of Chicago acts. Um, just actually worked on the new She and Him record. He played on a track with um what's his face? Brian Wilson from the frickin' Beach Boys. He played on a track
Oh
with
wow.
yeah. So cool stuff. And John has, of my friends, by far the biggest record collection out of any of us. And for him, as much as it is gear, it's also records that hold the story because he's a touring drummer.
Mhm.
So anytime he's in a city, he's going to hit up different record spots. So he remembers where he got his records, and he's always got a story about the record, the band itself, the record itself, the record shop, the city, the gig, whatever. There's something to every piece in the collection. So records, if you're going to hold memory in something, a record is nice and easy because it's about yay big. A
Yeah.
drum set is about a thousand times bigger. So be a record collector, don't be a drummer. But yeah, this is it's tough. But with my bass, even just having that body there, and now that it's complete, and it plays good and everything, every time I pick it up, I can remember. Oh, yeah, I remember that gig I played when I was 13, and I pushed this, my little Ampeg 115 out with the what was a brand like the brand new Behringer 300-watt head that had just come out, and my P bass on top, and I remember walking that down and trying to go back in the venue to check on my stuff, and then I remember a bunch of skinheads knocking me out. Like
Oh no.
it's silly now, but it's like, you remember every good thing, every bad thing, everything in between. I every little thing you did with that can come back in a moment's notice of picking it up, looking at it, or anything, and that's what's so that's a beautiful thing about music and gear itself,
Great.
not necessarily getting beat up by skinheads, but all
Oh,
the other memories.
not that part. I don't want to leave that topic because I feel like there's so much more there, but I also don't want to forget what I've been meaning to ask
Yeah,
from
please.
earlier on. Oh, well, I guess, do you have anything else you want to add on in terms of nostalgia or your upbringing with music? Like, um, maybe your who inspired you to get into music in the first place?
Yeah, it's obviously parents for me are a big one, so I've talked a lot about the music that my mom and my dad liked and how that kind of translated into teaching me or giving me a sense of what was cool, and then discovering punk rock, and then having my own sort of cool in the same way that you have your own sense of drumming as opposed to the way your dad plays.
Mm.
And as far as, musical memories go, one thing I'll say is one of the beautiful things of hanging out with two drummers, that E-Man dude that I was talking about earlier, and John, we're literally just three dudes uh sitting on a little grassy knoll eating pizza and just talking about all these beautiful moments where we've all been starstruck, like uh I remember John was talking about how he was playing uh a wedding of a particular jazz drummer's daughter, and he looked behind him, and then there's Joe Porcaro's daughter, and then so like I think it was the daughter was looking at John as he's playing on the stage and said, look behind you, look behind you. Joe Porcaro, Jim Keltner, and Remo Belli behind him.
No way.
And he's just like, oh my gosh. And then E-Man was talking about, playing LA all the time. It's uh Vinny Caliuta might turn up at a gig, or uh, Jim Keltner might turn up at a gig and where he's playing. And in the same way, I've had my own stories where it's like, again, the phone call from Kurt, for me, even just those moments of hanging out with John and E-Man, or just like, who would have ever thought this would be something I'd be doing in my life? One of the funny ones I like to tell is, um, so I played Revival Drum Shop's a big vintage drum shop in Portland, Oregon,
Okay.
and I've been friends with Jose there for a while, the owner, and the guys who work at the shop. And Jose was throwing a 10th anniversary party for the shop in 2019. So I was out in Portland for that. They asked me to open the show up. I did. It went great. Got to hang out and have dinner with Mark Juliana, Matt Chamberlain,
Oh
and
wow.
Jose, and a host of other big names. And but the guy who headlined the gig was Fred Armisen. And so, I did the gig. I didn't really get to talk to Fred or anything, but then I think I don't know if it was this summer or the summer before. I got it might have been the spring. I got a text from Jose, and he said, "Hey, did Fred ever reach out?" And I'm trying to think. This was out of nowhere, so I didn't know what he was talking about. Fred. So I said, "Was you talking about Fred Armisen?" Uh, and he said, "Yeah, Fred. He was asking about you. He wanted your number, and Fred was wondering where you live, and so." I just thought it was silly. So now I like to tell people Fred Armisen's trying to figure out where I live. But it's like we all have these moments, and the beautiful, I think this is why we keep doing it, right? Because these moments continue to happen week after week, month after month, year after year, without these little serendipitous things that happen. I don't think we'd keep doing what we do.
Mm,
That's a big part of the joy. Big
yeah.
part of the joy.
Yeah, there's so many like ways or paths that could just be, the door is open there for you to take, whether you take it or not. You never know how far you're gonna go with that path, or and along that path, who you're gonna meet, what experiences you're gonna have. It's it's very philosophical, but it's just life in
But
general, really. But
that's the beautiful part of it. It kind of comes back to that theme of flexibility.
yeah,
In the same way that you don't know what your personal future is going to hold as far as what you're going to be doing in 5 years, you don't know who you're going to meet with, who you're going to hang with, and what you're going to do with those folks.
yeah,
Week and a half ago, I was just hanging out working, and I got a text from E-Man saying, "Hey, I'm at, I'm southwest of Chicago in a week and a half. Do you want to come out?" I didn't know he was going to holler at me, nor did I know that he was on tour with John. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm on tour with John." So then I started the group text with me, John, and E-Man, and we set the whole thing up. It's like, oh man, it's just you don't know what's going to happen. It's the same
yeah.
thing why you have to do this is a good thing to remind both of us of, is whether you're making Instagram posts or podcasts or whatever in between, you have to do this because you love it. And
Yeah.
if you don't love it, then it ain't serving you and you shouldn't be doing it. Because if you do this because you love it, people are going to recognize that, and then it's going to turn into, it could turn into something good down the road. But if you hate this, why are you even do that? Because people are going to feel that vibe, and then you're not getting anything out of it. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
yeah, it's during COVID, I had a few drummer mates ask me, "Hey, like, is teaching good money and stuff like that?" Because they lost their jobs or whatever. And I just told them, like, don't get into teaching for money, especially not teaching, because you need to be in it for the passion of teaching, not
you're
the
affecting those kids'
yeah.
futures.
That's right. That's right. So, and like all of them just didn't pursue it
Hmm.
because they were just thinking of doing it out of necessity. To, I mean, I know that sounds bad. They were just trying to earn a living because they lost their job, but
That's
still,
hard. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, that is really difficult because there's a few famed drummers out there who I've heard horror stories about doing
yeah,
drum lessons with. And for them it's just, man, you're trying to get through the pandemic and because you don't know what else you're going to do for a living.
yeah,
Um and I understand that necessity just to get through that moment, financially, but to leave, to charge a premium to spend time with someone thinking it's going to be a learning opportunity and leaving feeling empty and gypped, man, that never reflects good on. It
Oh
doesn't
no.
reflect good on you. It doesn't leave anybody feeling good afterwards. There's nothing good that comes out of that.
Nah, nah. So yeah, I think yeah, that's what I was sort of trying to get at. Like people
Mm.
pick up if someone has the wrong intentions.
Oh, 100%. I look at Instagram. There's Instagram, TikTok more generally is a another platform where you can just tell. And unfortunately, there are a number of consumers who just consume the content for the sake of consuming the content and don't really question the motives or anything. But I think what's important is the people who, in my opinion, the people who matter more are going to pick up on that uh that lack of genuine feeling, that lack of joy, that uh mis misdirection of kind of I guess that lack of good intention.
Yeah.
They're going to pick up on that, and those are the people who might be feeding you your next gig.
Yeah.
Those are the people who are, those are the people who could be championing your work, who aren't now going to champion your work. And in my opinion, that's much more important. On Instagram, I think the chops community is a very there's so many drummers who just play the same chop over and over, and they do the same video, refilmed, over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I can attest to that. Sometimes those drummers get gigs. Can they hold them?
Mm.
Less of those drummers can hold them.
Yeah.
And so it's just to say that there's a set of skills to gaining a audience on Instagram. There's a separate set of skills necessary to uh, use that audience in a way that benefits you. And there's an even deeper set of skills in which you can do that in a way that doesn't uh that's I don't want to say this altruistically, but like that is good. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
That is
yeah.
benevolent. That is benevolent.
The whole, I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole in itself, but
Oh yeah.
the like the pitfalls of social media, which a lot of people know about now, but maybe still a lot of people need to learn. Um,
It's just like any friendship though. Like whether it's because that's really what social media is it's a community.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the biggest, party that you're mingling within all day long, every day. And you're going to meet everyone and anyone at this party. And, based on your social IQ, this is where it comes back again. It's just like you can determine, okay, this person's a jerk, or this person is just trying to get me into a Ponzi scheme, or this on the other side, it's like, oh, this is a genuinely nice person. I'd like to get to know them more, and I think that we could be friends. So it's, again, I think this, whether you're 17 or 71, you just have to have the social chops to really see through the smoke and mirrors of it all.
Yeah.
I think that's why my content's so raw. It's like it's just a dude in a basement. I'm filming with an iPhone. The audio's nice, but I'm just filming with an iPhone. There's no fancy lights. There's no fancy. I use a cheapy light kit that I got from Amazon just to have, a decent light, uh and I think it shows. I think people really connected back in the day with that. I would wear my work attire right in the videos. I would have, Calvin Klein slacks and a button-up shirt and my tie on from when I got out of work at Uline. This is an ad for Calvin Klein. I need give me a gift certificate or something. But I'd sit down on the kit and just shed right there and then in my shirt and tie. And I think people really resonated with that because it's they're doing the same thing. We this is the thing about jobs too, and I'm sure you can relate to this. Uh, this is I think because of who we are as creatives, as drummers, a day job really for us is just putting on another costume, and you go and you perform the role of whatever, and then you can take that costume off when you get home and you can be yourself again.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty of those early videos, I think, was like, I'm still in my costume. You guys know what's going on here. So yeah.
I I know this is sort of a separate topic, but we were just talking about it before with the whole bad intention. Some people just don't even mask it up. I had someone message me the other day. They followed uh, the Drawing Mastermind page and just said, "Hey, how are you?" And I'm like, "Good. How are you?" Next message was, "I'm starting up a new clothing label. Would you be interested?" I'm like, "I'm really sorry, but just being honest, no. I'm not going to lead you on. I just have no interest in being endorsed by a clothing label or any of that sort." And then he just replied with, so what you're telling me is you don't want the best for me?" And I'm like, I just didn't know how to reply to that.
It's all these, dude, there's so many spammers and
Yeah.
scammers. Here's another thing about social media is, dude, you got to have thick skin because you would not believe the hateful comments I get. It's just
Oh,
outrageous. But the longer this goes on, the more often I'm able to just screenshot it, laugh, delete it, block that user, and move on. And I get the same, crap in DMs too. This is the more people you have looking at your content, the more often you're going to have people saying stupid stuff.
it's a numbers
So
game.
it is a numbers game, 100%.
Yeah,
But
it's
so, anyways, I'm starting a clothing brand, and if you want the
no,
best for me, you let me.
no. The hate that you get, it's never from someone who is actually again, like, just being blunt, it's never from anyone good on the drums, is it? Or,
It's never from anyone that follows me.
yeah, there you go.
It's never, it's never from, uh, and I think I kind of mentioned this earlier, but it's like this is why the people that you associate with, professionally, personally, or otherwise, because I think that it all blends when you're a creative or a drummer, is always always ensure that those relationships, in those relationships, that this is someone whose work you want to champion and who they're going to want to champion your work too. It has to have that two-way street. That's so important, because then you're going to push them to be better and to continue doing what they're doing during, dark moments like a freaking pandemic. And they're going to do the same, give you the same, boost that that you need as well during that tough time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Great.
as far as the hate, it's always idiots. It's just always trolls and people on Finstas, like
Yeah.
fake accounts. So, there's no need to pay any attention to it. If anything, use it for a laugh. I love to screenshot them and show them to my friends, like, look what this freaking ding dong said, and have a laugh and move on. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Well, I hate this saying, but like it is what it is. You got to treat it for what it is. Just some nobody on the internet who is having a bad day or whatever, or just seeks out these opportunities because it gets them off or whatever.
In the same way that, like I said, this is just basically a giant party in which we're mingling online. In the same way that you're going to have, the guy trying to sell you a set of knives that are garbage. And in the same party, you're going to have your best friends are going to be there. And at the same party, you're going to have a freaking Debbie Downer who no one
Yeah.
wants to be there at all,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's just the way of the world.
I wanted to go back to your career progression. So out of high school or like from schooling to now, what has it been like?
Sure. So I started gigging when I was 12.
Started
I pro
gigging when you were 12, did you say?
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
And yeah, and it was little stuff. And but we were, when I started this little punk rock band, we were quite the little entrepreneurial crew. We anybody who had a birthday party, we'd be like, hey, can we play your birthday party? And so, like, there were gigs where my little 115 cab was on wheels, and there was a gig where I literally walked it 3 blocks. My whole rig, I walked it 3 blocks to a gig. And people would pay. Parents would pay us a little money here and there, and little gigs would pay us a little money. And we
Wow.
saved up in the first year of being a band, we saved up $400 to go cut an EP. And and then in the next few years after that, we saved up another, I don't know, $300-400 and did a second EP. So, and this was $400 back, 15 years ago was a lot of money. So, that was pretty cool. And then in college, I played a little bit more. But I think the big change in college is I was working for a music store.
Okay.
So that's where this business side of the MI musical instrument industry side, that's where that kind of bug came in. And I had to figure out how to make $100 drum set sound like $1 million, because no one's going to pay for $100 drum set if it sounds like garbage.
Yeah.
So I got really good at that. I got really good at understanding vintage drums, why do they sound good, how to make them sound better. And that's carried me through a lot of the stuff that I do now with some of these different companies. So after that, I kept playing in bands after college. And I just had a conversation about this. It was last night. And I quit playing in bands when I was 26 because I got sick, so I didn't have the energy to do what I was doing. And I thought I didn't know what I was going to do or what was going to happen. But what wound up actualizing itself was that I had the biggest, step forward in my career I've ever had, which is I had been posting on Instagram. I was posting more on Instagram, and a producer found me and had me start doing studio work for him. And that blossomed into a really, really great career. I loved it because, when you do studio work, You don't have to move your drums. You just hit record on the computer, and you get paid. For me, I got paid way more than I ever did playing out live, and it was less work and it was more fun. And so that was the turn that my career took then. Slowly, that branched out into through Instagram, I started making connections with drum manufacturers, retailers, distributors, and I'm so fortunate that these folks all wanted me to succeed too. So when I quit my job at Uline, um, slowly but surely, there were a dozen, 20 different companies that just like, hey, you want a little extra money? Can you do this? You want a little extra money? Can you do that?
Wow.
And not only was it a great way to boost my resume, it was a great way to make a little extra money. It was amazing experiences, you know. So that's kind of the progression of my career. Is it was play out, work in the music shop, play out some more, do the studio thing, and now getting back into the music business, musical instrument business side of things.
Yeah.
And I think it's always, this is kind of that flexibility with. I never knew I was gonna record drums for a large multi-million-dollar Disney production in my mom's basement in Wisconsin. That's never crossed my mind before it happened. In the same way that I never thought that I would be sharing a stage with, David Bowie's last studio drummer and Matt Chamberlain, one of the greatest studio drummers of all time. And none of this, you never know what's going to happen. So, being able to stay flexible and just celebrating whatever wins you have is important. And I continue to try to celebrate those wins. And I look forward to whatever the heck else is going to happen over the next 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah, definitely. Just going back to that first, well, I mean, it might not be the first producer, but the
Yeah.
producer you mentioned that picked you up off Instagram, was that Disney related, or did that sort of lead to the Disney gig?
It led to Disney. So but it was all through him. Because as
Oh,
he was growing, I was his guy.
okay. I see.
And so we did a lot of video game soundtracks,
Awesome.
which paid as much as Disney, and it was less work. And I did the Disney stuff. We did Fox. I worked on movie soundtracks for like big movies.
Wow.
And it was so cool. And this was the thing is people still ask me like, "Hey, where can I hear your music?" And it's like, "Well, does your mom play video games on the internet, or does like, like there's that sort of thing." But then like there's also it's tough because it was all commercial work. So like,
Yeah.
you can't just go on iTunes or Apple Music or Spotify or whatever and find this stuff. And so like now there was another producer who 2.5, 3 years ago, he found me on TikTok.
Mm.
Or actually one of his artists, I think the pair of them, they found me on TikTok, and then I don't shot me a text or something. And I had no clue who they were beforehand, and turned out they were, big dudes. And so I was able to do some stuff for a few different artists on Warner Records. Again, right out of the basement here. So
Crazy.
it's just crazy, dude. Crazy, crazy opportunities.
So obviously getting out there, has its potential massive benefits. What your current, sorry, your skill set at the time working with Fox and Disney, were you just doing drum recording, or were you doing other instruments as well?
Just drums. I've only ever done drums for the big dogs.
Okay. And then the other side of that question is, were they asking you to do what you do, like so your sound, all that, or did they just want you to record parts that they basically told you to play,
The
and they
beautiful
would?
thing about, so like the main producer that I worked with for many years was Adam Gubman. He has a
Mhm.
company called Moonwalk Audio. And what was so fun about working with Adam is that many times he'd say like, Yeah, I have like a MIDI part in there, and you can kind of follow it, but just like do your thing. And there was so much freedom in that, and to have that freedom is just like what's one of my favorite things was the big Disney show we did for Japan, where I played drums for like 7 or 8 minutes out of a 15-minute show,
Wow.
and I had free reign over doing whatever I wanted. So
Blast
I
beats for the whole
Dude,
thing.
there because he's like, yeah, we're gonna like popify it and hip hopify it. So just like bring the chops. I was like, game on, dude. And so like it's hard to find videos now because Disney got the freaking copyright thing, taking down the videos. But um I remember there was videos and I it's just like, some dad filming the show at Disney and I can hear my like like gospel chops in the back. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's me. Like, what in the world? Like, just so wild. So, anyways, yeah, it's like those are the best kind of gigs where you have that freedom. And even, you talk to live, professional live drummers, and I think many of them will tell you the same thing. Because with all the programming that we do now and backing tracks and stuff, like there are some gigs where you have to play the exact same thing down to every note and every fill every single night of the tour. To me, at that point, you're more of a performer than a drummer, and
Yeah.
that's a bummer. No one wants that. And then, if you can get to that opposite side of the spectrum where there is more life to the music, more humanity to the music, that's why we all do this.
Yeah.
So those are the gigs to chase for sure.
So then, like, you had a mixed experience with corporate work. I'm gathering where you have your free reign, and then you have you must do it this way. How does that whole thing overall compare to just live gigging, like doing cover shows or any of that sort of stuff?
I
What do you
have been
enjoy more?
fortunate. As far as do I enjoy corporate work more than drumming or live drumming versus recording work?
Yeah, corporate versus live drumming. Yeah.
Live. I mean, if I could just play drums live every day, I would just be playing drums live every day. But we have to deal with late stage capitalism, so here we are, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
But it's fine. It's fine. Again, that's why I think it's so important that if you feel it's a necessity for you, or if not, if you feel if it straight up is a necessity for you to work a 9 to 5, to build a path for yourself to which you have the flexibility to find a position that gives you the freedom and the, again, physical, mental, emotional energy to do the things outside of work.
Okay.
The drumming, whatever your thing is, if you want to, the old school American thing is if you don't have a hobby, you just if you're an underwater basket weaver, then yeah, you have time to do that.
All right. So we've gotten to the stage in your life where you've been getting out on Instagram, you've done corporate work with Disney and Fox. What next? What was next in the Timbo timeline?
I mean, now it's just finding out I think for me it was, well, first it was I thought I was just going to find a corporate 9 to 5 in music.
Yeah.
I thought that was the way, and I was inflexible in that, and I'm glad I'm glad to have had the opportunities interviewing, talking with all these folks, working with Roland. Um, but I wish I had been more flexible from the get-go in what kind of job I wanted to work. I think what kept me down that path of the music stuff is I put my resume out there on my story on Instagram, and then it just went wild, like uh, uh Jared from Drumeo had me he was like, "Hey, I'm going to have my chief marketing officer reach out to you." So we talked for I think a month and a half, and
Wow.
it didn't work out, but it's like, and that was just one of many different companies that I talked to. So it's like, just because I put my freaking resume in my Instagram story, these were the conversations I started to have with folks.
Wow.
Um, so really we're just about up to now with the story is like now I think, right now it's through all of these experiences the last year and a half, I have a much better understanding of what I want out of life and how to get it. And I'm so happy that I am where I am now. Not particularly happy about the experiences I've had, with some of this other work, but it's necessary
Yeah.
to come to this point to have the perspective that I do now,
Yeah.
to understand that the gig I have now is as good as as it could be. This is a perfect job for me because again, I can put the time into these other things that I love, and I have a little bit of money to put into the other things that I love. And the other thing is that the other things that I love can provide extra income. That there's again, this is a state job, so it doesn't pay as much as a corporate position might. And they're very open, saying, "Hey, you need keep your side hustle," and I'm happy to do so because now I can make a little money doing things that I love, and again, further building my resume. And I think the way the pension system works with the state, I could retire at like 57. So
Okay.
like, if let's just say I knock on wood, God willing, get to 57 and have a few more years under my belt in life, or left in life, then who's to say I couldn't retire out and go tour with some legacy act that needs a drummer, or uh do some of these things that I'm not doing now, or I'll have built. I'll have had by that point another 25 years under my belt of doing all the same stuff that I'm doing now, and that evolving over time. And through the evolution of all of that, I'm hoping it'll get to a point where then that'll be something totally different and hopefully totally better, and something that can, I don't know, give me something else to do for the rest of whatever time I'm left with here on Earth.
Mm.
So
That's amazing though. It's so good that you are happy with where you're at and you've got so much more um I guess direction is the word I want to use. Like it's great that you know where you want to go
mm.
with
And
everything.
again, it comes back to flexibility too, just like not being okay with the plans change. And then the other part of it too is just like trying to um in that flexibility, just also kind of staying grounded through it and just appreciating every little moment,
Yeah.
and I think, having gone through what I've gone through the past 2, 3, 5, 6 years here with all this health stuff, um leaves me with a much greater sense of appreciation for anything and everything, little, big, and in between. And so that makes this the whole journey itself, the start point, the end point, and everything in between, so much better and experience generally.
It's such a simple thing that s- most people just overlook, like being grateful for anything, really.
It's tough, I think, because so many of the folks I know are either uh, are middle class, middle upper class folks in the US, Europe, and Australia. And in those continents and these places and these economic positions, if you're if you're living like that, I am a white male, middle class, and I've got no debt. And but now the last few years I've had to deal with chronic illness and disability. If you're all of those other things, if you're a white person, you're middle class, if you're a man, and then if you've got if you're able-bodied and you really haven't had too much of nothing else happen in your life, I think it's harder to truly it's harder to truly get to a place of appreciating every little freaking win in life, whether
Yeah.
it's just, I mean little things, being able to go on a walk with your partner and hold their hand and enjoy a cool night looking at the moon and talking about life.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest, that's the biggest stuff there is in life. And
Yeah.
if I think we appreciate that less with I'll say this, you appreciate it more with the more BS you've had to deal with in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a shame though, because it's just it's sad that we need to suffer in order to learn to appreciate when we should just be able to do it just because.
Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Mm.